What's going on, guys? We are talking grid and the promotion relegation tournament that will be coming. I'm not sure if that's technically what it's called. It might be called the closed qualifier for grid for split 2. I don't know. But either way, there's a promo relegation happening, and that's what I'm going to call for now. So let's talk about who's in, who's out, who's on the cusp, and all of that. There's still a lot to be played. Obviously, grid is about to be over. There's only one more week there. So we kind of know where that's going to, but when you look at RLCS, we still got a lot to play for. Like, sure, there's only one more regional and then a major, but when you think of it that way, we're not even halfway done in terms of points, because major is double points, and obviously that would be the same as a regional 1 or plus a regional 2, and then there's obviously a regional 3 in there as well. So there's still a lot to be played for over there. Some teams will make it into the major, some won't, but we'll talk about that all right now. First, let's talk about the European region in general. For the grid, BDS, they just won yesterday, so congrats to them. It moves them up a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's not really going to matter, because when we look at the top, there is 3 teams that can possibly win the entire thing. Giants came in at 781. They would have to win the entire thing, and Vitality would have to come in last. That is the only way for them to win this. Because if not, Vitality gets 30 points. So if Vitality gets even 1 win, then Giants can no longer win the entire grid. Now, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter for Giants all that much. There's no prize money on the line. It's more for pride. So they would just want to win for the prize money in Week 9 anyway. Now, for a team like Oxygen, that matters a whole lot more. We talked about them a little bit last time, where they need things to go their way in terms of trying to qualify for the major through RLCS. They basically need at least a 9th and possibly a bracket finish to make it in. So that could be a little bit more difficult. I guess we'll find out after this weekend if they are playing for literally everything next weekend. So for Oxygen, they need at least a top 2 finish. 150 points would give them 980. They would be above Vitality. Vitality would have to lose every single game. It's the only way. So it'd be 973. If Vitality wins the entire thing, finally getting their first win, they'd be at 1,031 points, which means they'd be 60-something points behind, so 70 basically. Vitality would have to finish top 4. Because if Vitality finishes 5th through 8th, that is only 60 points. They'd be at 1,023, so they would lose out by 8 points to Oxygen for the win. That's plausible. Oxygen has a chance to win this for sure. They've been very close before, but that's basically where they're looking at. Oh wait, was that? Yes, I'm sorry. So that is for the win in general. So that is basically what Oxygen is looking for. They have to win, and then they want Vitality to fall out in the playoff round, which I guess could be possible. Maybe Oxygen plays Vitality in that quarterfinals. That'd be an absolutely huge match. It'd be perfect for Oxygen for what they need to get done. So we'll see what happens there. But they can obviously make it in other ways. We talked about that in the last video about where they can make it in the major. We're not too focused on the top here. Now, these guys are all locked in. Anyone with this yellow border is locked in, and they will be into the grid next season. Top 10 will go into the grid for Season 2. For Split 2, I should say. But there's a lot of spots to be played for here. Guild actually had a really good finish yesterday, making the grand finals, which bumped them ahead. Good for them, because before that they had 300 points. So say they would have had a normal finish for them, they probably would have been down here somewhere. Guild at 450, that they're not locked in yet, but they're looking pretty comfortable. They have an 80-point lead over Barca for that last spot, which means Barca would have to make it top 4, and Guild would have to come in last for Barca to pass them. Then, obviously, there's still Monkeys, would then also have to make top 4. And then Endpoint would just have to make it to the playoff. That would be the way that Guild gets out. So that's a lot going on. They need 2 teams to make top 4 that usually don't. Monkeys have been a little bit hotter lately, but 2 teams that usually don't, and they need another team to even make the bracket stage, which, is basically a 50-50 shot at this point with Endpoint. So Guild looking pretty good. On top of that, there's obviously like Team Singularity and all that. Team Singularity would have to finish top 2 to pass Guild. So, again, very unlikely. And then Solary would have to finish first to pass Guild. So Guild looking relatively safe. Next up, you go down to Endpoint, Monkeys, and all them. This is where it gets way more interesting. So say Endpoint, came in last at 410. Monkeys would just have to come in ninth, and they would tie. So they would just need one win there. And then Barca would be one of those teams that has to make bracket stage. So Barca would have to make bracket stage. Team Singularity would have to make bracket stage, but not any further than that. And then Solary, when you get down the line, they would have to go a little bit higher. So basically, Endpoint, if they came in last, Monkeys would just need to win one game. Barca and Team Singularity would have to make the bracket stage. That would put Monkeys and Endpoint in a tiebreaker for the last spot. So that's how it works for Endpoint. Say Endpoint does win at least one game. They're at 430, and there's looking relatively safe. Once again, Monkeys would have to make the bracket stage. Barca would have to... they could also make bracket stage and tie them. Then Team Singularity would have to finish third or fourth. And then Solary would basically be done at that point. They would have to finish top two. So, Endpoint, okay. Monkeys and Barca are the really, really close ones. Obviously, any placement difference will give Barca the edge. That's as simple as that. Because when we look at it, there is no 10-point difference in the grid. So this 10-point difference here between Barca and Monkeys basically means they cannot tie, if I'm doing my math right. So if Barca finishes above Monkeys anywhere, they get the spot over Monkeys because there's a 20-point gap here. 30-point gap here, 40-point, 50-point, and finally 51 points at the end. So for Barca Monkeys, that's where we lie right now. In terms of ties, that can happen like near that bottom. Team Singularity has a very good chance to tie Monkeys. If one makes bracket, Team Singularity makes bracket, Monkeys finish ninth. That would be a chance for a tie there. Like if Team Singularity just beats them for ninth and Monkeys obviously come in last, that would not be good enough. So for Team Singularity purposes, in order to qualify, they would have to come in ninth is the first thing. They wouldn't pass Monkeys. So actually, they can't come in ninth. They would have to make bracket stage at this point for Team Singularity. They'd be at 410 points. Obviously, then they could tie Endpoint, they can pass Monkeys, and they can pass Barca. Plus, it depends how the grid bracket pans out here. But for Team Singularity, they have to make bracket to have any chance to make it to this top 10 spot. While on the other side, Monkeys, that they can back their way in, obviously. They don't really have to do anything if certain things go their way. If Barca also comes in last, Team Singularity just doesn't make bracket. Same with Solary and all that. So Solary would actually have to make top four. So that's what Monkeys need. They can back their way in. Barca, obviously, they just have to pass Monkeys, and they're in. As long as Team Singularity doesn't also pass them, that's where it gets a little bit hairy here. So Team Singularity, again, need at least a bracket finish, and then possibly more. But bracket finish will put them in a relatively good spot. Solary, on the other hand, they need some decent help. They would have to come in third or fourth, and also hope that Monkeys come in last. That would be the only way that they get it, by coming in third or fourth. If not, then they have to come top two, and then they would very likely get in. Endpoint or Monkeys would have to basically... Monkeys would have to not place top four at that point. So that's, relatively likely if they make top two. And then on the other side, they could also have Endpoint just not make the bracket stage, and they would be in. So that's what Solary needs. They need basically a top two finish, top four if Monkeys come in last, and also if Barca doesn't do well, yada, yada, yada. So they could tie Barca if Barca comes in 9th through 12th. So they would need, obviously, other help, too. With Team Singularity, same thing. They don't want them to make brackets, so there's a lot going on there. For Team Libertas, there's one way, simply one way to get in. They have to win the entire thing. So they would get 201 points. They'd be at 391. They would need Monkeys to come in last, so they would be at 390. And then they would also need, again, Barca to come in last as well, which might not even be possible when we get to this point. So Barca would have to come in last as well. And then Team Singularity would have to not make the bracket stage. Same thing with Solary, all that. Solary would not have to come top four, so there's a lot going on there. The last team, Dignitas, they are the only team mathematically out. There was a 16th team chalked, but they disbanded. Looks like Fadeaway is taking that spot for the last week just to play for some prize money. So That's where we're at right now, which is really strange saying at the start of the season to say Dignitas is the only team out of the grid. So they will definitely be playing in the promotion relegation. Bottom 6 go to the promotion relegation. Top 6 in non-grid teams in RLCS-X, they go to the promotion tournament. And then there's 4 open qualifier spots as well. Total of 16 teams there. So that's what we're looking at. So we know what the teams have to do in the grid for the final week. Now let's go down to the non-grid teams in the RLCS. I should have grayed out more of this so there's not a lot of white on the screen. I probably should also grayed out over here, but hey, whatever. I tried to help. I tried to help the people that don't like white screens. But talk about top teams in RLCSX non-grid. Magnifico, 300 points. They will make the major even though they didn't qualify for Regional 3. Again, there's a Regional 3 and a major that is still alive at this point. Barrage Esports and Fadeaway very likely make the major no matter what happens from here on out. And I don't actually have all the names necessarily of who qualified and who didn't. I think Minx didn't qualify, but I haven't researched that just yet. So my apologies there. So, like, in terms of that, right now, top 7 spots would get in. This is likely. Like, I don't know exactly what the rule's going to be because there was a disbanded team. It's either top 7 in non-grid teams or 1 extra spot in the qualifier. So don't, I'm not sure what it is just yet. But for this case, we will talk about top 7 here. So Minx right now is in that last spot, but I think they didn't make the regional. So they also will not make major because they don't have enough points. So they are very likely to fall out depending on what happens with teams below them. But as long as one team does okay, then they're fine. So Magnifico, Barrage, and Fadeaway will definitely be there. I can guarantee you that because unless things go really, really, really weird, these guys will make it. These guys will all very likely play in the major. Barrage and Fadeaway are a little bit more on the cusp of like it could possibly not go their way, but they're very likely going to the major, so they'll get guaranteed points there. So they will be in. And then it comes down to these last 4 spots. Train Hard has a pretty sizable lead, so you would think they would very likely make it. Then we got the old Stormtroopers team, Bricks.gg. They didn't make Regional 2, so it hurt them a little bit, but they made top 16 the first regional. So we'll see what they do in this regional. But at this point, like as we go down, that there's more teams with like 20 and 10 points as well. It really comes down to if you can make the major, you're set, right? So, but realistically, Train Hard's probably the only team that has a good chance of making the major. We could see if like Stormtroopers makes another good run or the last resort, they could barely squeak into the major. It's possible. After that, though, it's really going to come down to what team does pretty well in Regional 3. If you look at the points, I believe it was plus 50 to make it to the next weekend, and then like every win after that's 20 points extra. Because that would make sense for Ricks, because I think they got 1 win on the top 16 area for Stormtroopers. So it really could come down to just who does well there. And it could be a brand new team. Who knows? To be the top 6 non-grid teams. And I think I got every single name in here, but if I missed one, just let me know in the comments below. But it's going to be interesting to see who pops out, who makes it to that promotion relegation. Now, at the end of the day, there is still an open qualifier for 4 more spots. So that could be like if a team completely disbands, like anywhere within the grid or not grid or whatever, and they want to try for a spot with a brand new team, then they still have a door that's open there for teams to join the grid. Because obviously grid for split 1 was basically invite only. There was 1 spot for Europe, but that was only because a team disbanded. Now it'll be a little bit more open, so it'll be fun to see who makes it, and also we'll see what we do with the next season of grid. But here's where we are right now. Still a lot to play for. Generally speaking, we know what the bottom 6 teams are, or at least a decent amount of them right now. Probably. But we got 1 more week there, so we'll finish that off next week. Now, we won't know necessarily. Actually, we probably will know. After Regional 3, we'll probably know our top teams that are not in the RLCS X, or not in grid, that have RLCS X points. Because very likely it's not going to be more than these teams making the major. So we'll probably know who's going to be in promotion relegation right away. After this weekend and after next, I guess it's Wednesday, I think it is, for the last grid for Europe. So we'll find out then at least 12 of the teams, then the open qualifier to be determined. We still have a little while till next grid anyway, because we have the whole, basically all of October is major month, so we'll be doing that. But that's where we are sitting right now. I hope you guys understood it, and yeah, hope you guys have a good day. We'll see you for the Super Week Europe Regional 3. It's going to be very, very exciting. Can't wait to do it. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's going to be a marathon, but it'll be a good time. So we'll see you there on twitch.tv/Rocket League. Until then, see you next time. Bye-bye.